the beginning of the end. It was a day that many fans saw coming, yet no one wanted to believe. The day Pink Floyd, one of the most iconic rock bands of all time, officially broke up. But how did a band that gave us timeless albums like The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall end up in pieces? The tension in Pink Floyd had been building for years. From the outside, everything looked perfect. They were global superstars constantly at the top of the charts, and their concerts were legendary. But inside the band, things were falling apart. The root cause? Two people, Roger Waters and David Gilmour. Roger Waters, the band's bassist and primary lyricist, had started to take control. His vision for the band's sound, image, and message became more pronounced, and he wasn't afraid to push his ideas, sometimes at the expense of his bandmates. David Gilmour, the guitarist with a soulful voice and powerful solos, was starting to feel sidelined. He wanted to create music that reflected his own ideas, but Waters wasn't interested in compromising. And then there was Syd Barrett, the original frontman, the band's creative genius, had been struggling with mental health issues and drug use. His unpredictable behavior had already caused massive disruption in the band's early years. But even after Barrett was forced to leave, his influence lingered, leaving cracks in the band's unity. Everything came to a head during the recording of The Wall. Waters, ever the perfectionist, became obsessed with his vision, which was both deeply personal and politically charged. The rest of the band, especially Gilmour, began to feel trapped in a project that was becoming more about Waters' vision than the collective spirit that had made Pink Floyd great in the first place. The pressure builds. As the recording of The Wall dragged on, the tension only increased. Waters' personality was intense, almost to the point of alienating everyone around him. He was determined to make The Wall his personal statement. He pushed the band to record track after track, often obsessing over every detail, while the others, particularly Gilmour, started to feel like they were being treated as mere instruments in his grand design. The band's internal struggles became impossible to ignore. Gilmour's guitar solos were often drowned out by Waters' demand for perfection, and when Gilmour did get his moment, it felt like a token gesture rather than a collaborative effort. The divide was clear. This wasn't a band anymore. It was a dictatorship. Behind the scenes, things were falling apart even further. Nick Mason, the drummer, and Richard Wright, the keyboardist, both had their own frustrations. Wright, once an integral part of Pink Floyd's sound, was often reduced to playing a secondary role, while Mason felt helpless in trying to keep the band together. Everyone was feeling the pressure, and their personal relationships were deteriorating fast. Even worse, the once unbreakable bond between the bandmates was beginning to show cracks. They weren't just arguing over music anymore. They were arguing about who controlled the band's legacy, who had the right to steer it forward. The bond that had made them great was now a source of bitterness and resentment. The breaking point. It was during the making of The Wall that Pink Floyd truly fell apart. The band was no longer functioning as a unit. The creativity that had once flowed effortlessly between the band members was now replaced with bitterness and animosity. Roger Waters, always the force driving the band, decided to make a bold move. He would leave. He was frustrated, but more than that, he felt like he was carrying the entire band. Gilmour, who had always been a bit more laid back, was ready to step up and take over, but he wasn't interested in simply replacing Waters. He knew that Pink Floyd, as they once knew it, was done. The moment Waters announced he was leaving, it was the final blow. Pink Floyd, as the world knew them, was over. Gilmour tried to keep things going, but it was clear that without Waters, the magic was gone. The remaining members were left to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out if Pink Floyd could even survive without their lead creative force. Aftermath and reflection. After the breakup, both Waters and Gilmour went on to have their own successful careers. Waters continued to push forward with his vision, creating albums that were deeply personal and political. Gilmour, on the other hand, focused on his own music, releasing solo albums that showcased his incredible guitar skills and softer, more reflective side. But the fans never stopped hoping. Would Pink Floyd ever reunite? Could the band ever return to its glory days? Or had the rift between Waters and Gilmour been too deep to mend? In the years that followed, both Waters and Gilmour occasionally spoke about the split. Waters was blunt, admitting that the tensions had been building for years and that the breakup was inevitable. Gilmour, though more reserved, admitted that the split was painful but understood that it was necessary for them both to grow as artists. Despite their differences, there was always a part of them that acknowledged the shared legacy they had created. They might have gone in different directions, but Pink Floyd's music, their masterpiece, would always remain untouched by time. The last word. The end of Pink Floyd wasn't just the end of a band. It was the end of an era in rock music. Pink Floyd was more than just a band. They were pioneers of sound, pushing the boundaries of music and storytelling. The breakup marked the end of one of the most influential periods in rock history, but it also marked the beginning of two separate paths that would eventually intersect in the hearts of millions of fans. Pink Floyd's legacy, however, lives on. Their music still resonates with fans around the world, and even though they're no longer together as a band, their influence on rock and roll is undeniable. The tensions, the heartbreak, and the drama were all part of what made Pink Floyd who they were. And it's that very drama that keeps us coming back to their music time and time again. Pink Floyd may have broken up, but their music, their story, and the mystery of what really happened will live forever in the hearts of fans. And as for Roger Waters and David Gilmour, well, the world is still waiting for the final chapter in the Pink Floyd saga, even if it's one that might never be written.